Even though I didn't love the TV show, I'm so glad they made it, because if it wasn't for this new adaptation, it would have been much longer before I covered Dangerous Liaisons. So I'm very grateful for Amazon readapting this, because it got me to finally read this amazing book. Hello, and thank you for joining me here at Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today I'm talking about the new Amazon TV show, Cruel Intentions. So the other week, I did a book versus movie video where I talked about the 90s movie, Cruel Intentions, which is an adaptation of the book, Dangerous Liaisons. And then I also talked about the 1988 movie, Dangerous Liaisons, as well in that video. And in that video, I go much more in depth into the plot of Dangerous Liaisons and the 90s movie, Cruel Intentions. So if after this video you want more details of the original stories, then definitely check out that video. And then also on that video, I got a lot of comments about the movie Valmont from 1989. So I have also since watched that movie, and at the end of my thoughts on Cruel Intentions, the TV show, I will then share my thoughts on Valmont. And this, of course, is broken into the timestamps down below, so you can just hop right to Valmont if you don't care about the TV show Cruel Intentions. But to start with my spoiler-free thoughts on the TV show, so this was just okay. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's certainly not a TV show that I'm going to tell people, like, you have to make time to watch this, like, you have to see it. That is not the case here. And it is definitely a pretty loose adaptation, because they do make a lot of changes and they leave out certain bits of drama from the book while adding other bits of drama, and then they seem to combine certain characters in some ways, which I'll get into. But I'm fine with it not being like a super faithful adaptation. I like that they were trying to do their own thing to some extent. My problem is that I just wasn't invested in the main two characters. So the Matoy counterpart here is named Caroline. The Valmont counterpart, his name is Lucien. I think I'm saying that name right. Lucien. I just didn't really care about those two. There are some side characters that I was more interested in, such as Cece and Blaise. But yeah, as far as Caroline goes, I did not care whether or not she got what she wanted. And then Lucien, I also just found him so bland. And I gotta say, this actor's haircut is so ugly. I know this is a popular hairstyle these days, and I have seen some guys pull it off, but the way it looks on him, it just looked so bad. I hated his hair. Anyway, not to get too passionate about his bad hair. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, what you thought of his haircut, but yeah, I hated it. But yeah, the character of Blaise, he was a lot like Matoy, and he even has his own manipulations going on with the character Scott. And so in some ways, that dynamic reminded me of Matoy and Cecile from the book. And so yeah, he was someone where he was manipulative and he did some messed up stuff, and yet I was rooting for him. So that was one character that kept me interested in the show. But at the end of the day, honestly, rather than spending time watching this show, I would say your time is better spent watching 1988 Dangerous Liaisons, 1989's Valmont, and the 1990s Cruel Intentions. It would take about the same amount of time to watch those three movies as it takes to watch this TV show, and I think your time would be better spent watching those movies instead. But let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments, whether you disagree or agree with me. I want to hear about it down below. And I will say, this movie, they did have a lot of fun Easter egg type things for those who have seen the 90s Cruel Intentions. So I did like that. And we have the song Bittersweet Symphony. Caroline also has the cross necklace that holds her cocaine, the car from the 90s movie, the two going to the nursing home. And then rather than him having a sex journal, which is what he does in the 90s movie, here he just records his sexual encounter. So that was like a modern twist on that part of the movie. And now I'm just going to get right into spoilers. So Annie is the character that kind of seems like a mix of different characters, because clearly she is like the Annette counterpart, because she is the one that the bet is about, and she is the one that Lucien ends up falling in love with. And yet she was reminding me of Cecile, because Caroline takes her under her wing, and we even get a scene where she is with Annie's mom, and Annie's mom is thanking Caroline like, oh, you're so good and kind to be helping my daughter as she's at this new school. And we got a scene just like that in Cruel Intentions and Dangerous Liaisons, but it was with the character of Cecile. And I didn't dislike this choice to kind of combine different aspects of these two characters into Annie. I just thought it was an interesting choice. But yeah, the bet with Annie, it also involves Lucien agreeing to help Caroline get Annie to pledge with Caroline's sorority. And to be honest, I just didn't find this part of the story interesting at all. And I like the idea of this taking place at a college with sororities and fraternity members. However, they like act like it's such a big deal, like we gotta get her to pledge with our sorority. But I just didn't really feel the stakes. And so I just didn't care whether or not Annie pledged with them. And we have Caroline, who is like trying to make things good with her mom and to please her mom in a sense, because her mom is very manipulative too. But again, I just didn't feel the stakes and I just didn't care. Whereas Blaise, he is a character, and Cece, they had more to lose. And so I think that's also why I was more invested in their storylines. But yeah, the character Cece here, she is the Cecile counterpart in some ways because she is Caroline's best friend and confidant. And she also ends up falling in love with a teacher, much like Cecile falls in love with her music teacher. And Caroline here, like Matoy in the book, she ends up sleeping with the teacher, but here she does it as a way to get Cece to care only about Caroline and the sorority, because she was starting to prioritize her time with this teacher a bit too much for Caroline's liking. And so she sleeps with him and tricks him into thinking things that aren't true about Cece. But yeah, obviously a huge part of the book and the 90s movie Cruel Intentions is also that Valmont ends up sleeping with Cecile and, manipulating her, but that does not happen here in the TV show. And then also one of the other twists and the layers to the drama in the book is the fact that it is Cecile's mom who is bad-mouthing Valmont to Torvel, the Annette Annie character. And I loved that part of the book because when you find that out, you're just like, whoa, like, it's a big reveal, and that's what gets Valmont interested in messing with Cecile. But yeah, here the character bad-mouthing Lucien is just this girl that Lucien had been sleeping with, and so then she becomes friends with Annie and tries to talk her out of becoming part of sororities at all. But everyone knows right off the bat that she's the one doing this, and so it wasn't like a reveal, and she wasn't connected to Cece in any way like she was in the book. And then here, Caroline releases Lucien's sex videos to the world as a way to make Lucien look bad, whereas in the 90s Cruel Intentions, Annette, with the help of Cecile too, they are the ones who release Sebastian's sex journal, but they do this as a way to incriminate Catherine, because at this point, Sebastian has died. And so by releasing his journals, they show Sebastian as being a good guy while showing the world who Catherine really is. And so yeah, they totally changed that too, because instead, Caroline is the one who releases the videos, and yeah, it just makes Lucien look bad in some people's eyes. But yeah, here too, Lucien, even though Annie is part of a bet, he ends up truly getting feelings for her and, kind of trying to change his ways in the end while being manipulated by Caroline. And I will say too, Cece and her professor, they are studying dictators and fascism in their class. And so I did think that was kind of cool because obviously, they're talking about how dictators are so manipulative and the things they do for the power and the control while also showing them as being human beings. And of course, that's what Caroline is doing, right? Amongst other characters, but yeah, how they manipulate people to control them in order to have more power. But yeah, to talk about Blaise a bit more, I feel like, again, as far as who he is from the book or the original Cruel Intentions, I almost feel like he is just another version of Matoy in many ways. And then again, Scott, the guy he's manipulating, feels a lot like Cecile. But yeah, as said, he was someone I was rooting for and whose story I was actually invested in. And I was sad to see his downfall, even though he causes his downfall himself by trying to blackmail Scott, a guy who he'd had a relationship with. And so again, my feelings for him mirrored my feelings for Matoy, where I disliked the ways he went about doing things and disliked certain things about him. And yet at the same time, I was sad to see his downfall in the end. And it was also sad too, because Scott finally, because they were in a relationship, but Scott, he was worried his dad wouldn't approve. And then I did think his character was interesting, Scott's, because he has all of these complicated emotions about not wanting to admit to himself that he's gay. And so he does things that hurt Blaise's feelings, right? And then also the fact that Blaise tries to set him up with Annie was also reminding me of the Catherine Matoy character, like setting up Sebastian to sleep with Cecile or Dawsony too, because right in Dangerous Liaisons, she's trying to fan the flames between Dawsony and Cecile. There's so many different names going on in my head. But yeah, anyway, so when Scott finally, he admits to his dad, like, yeah, I'm gay and I'm in love with Blaise, or I'm in a relationship with Blaise. And yet Blaise finds this out after he has betrayed Scott. And so, yeah, their whole storyline I was much more invested in than anything going on with Caroline or Lucien or Annie. But then another aspect of the story, again, that almost makes Annie feel more like Cecile is that Lucien, the Valmont character, he gets in a fight with the Scott character. And Scott had sort of dated Annie previously, and then they get in a fight. But they get in a fight because Lucien calls him out as gay, and so that makes Scott upset. But yeah, in Cruel Intentions, Sebastian Valmont, he gets in a fight with the guy who was in love with Cecile, right? And, in the original story, this leads to his death, whereas here Lucien, he lives. So I do appreciate, again, how they incorporated different elements while putting their own spin on it. But yeah, the show ends with Annie suspecting that Caroline is the one who slept with Cece's teacher. And I guess she is planning to expose Caroline for all of this. However, we don't actually see that happen in the show. So apparently they're making plans for a season 2. And yeah, as I was watching this final episode, I was like, man, how are they going to wrap things up? Because we only have like 30 minutes left. And that's when I realized they're not going to wrap things up. They're going to have a season 2. And I guess you could say my intentions are cruel because I have no intention of watching season 2, to be honest. And now to move on to the 1989 movie Valmont, directed by Milos Forman, which, by the way, he directed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I do have a book versus movie for, so I will link to that in case you want to check it out. But this was surprisingly different from the book. They made so many changes, and it also had a lot of humor to it, which the book and the 88 movie weren't really funny at all. Maybe like little bits of humor, but not much. Whereas this had a lot of humor to it, again, which I wasn't expecting. And then they make some significant character changes. So Valmont and Matoy are so different here, and they are not nearly as detestable as they were in the book. And then the ending is very different too. But before I get into spoilers, I'll just say that I did really enjoy this movie. I'm glad I watched it, and I would definitely recommend it. But if you are looking for a faithful adaptation, then the 88 movie is the closest to the book, and the 88 movie is fantastic. I loved that one. So Valmont I like a lot just as kind of its own thing, because if you try to compare it to the book too much, they just made a lot of changes, and even though Valmont and Matoy are so horrible in the book in many ways, I kind of like how horrible they are, And so I didn't love that they make them better people here to some extent. And so again, if you're going to watch this movie, I think you need to just accept it for what it is and not compare it too much to Dangerous Liaisons. That would be my advice. But anyway, now I'm going to get into spoilers. So beginning with Matoy, we see at the start that Matoy is with Cecile, and she is actually trying to look out for Cecile because Valmont comes walking around wanting to be introduced, and she takes him aside being like, you need to stay away from her. Leave her alone. She is off limits to you. And so then that makes us like her, the fact that she truly cares about Cecile. And then later we see her with her lover, a man named and she is genuinely happy with him. However, he is acting distant, and it is because he is secretly planning to marry Cecile. And so we see it happen where she likes being with him and she's being genuine with him. And we see the moment when she realizes that he kind of screwed her over and he is leaving her to be with Cecile. And so seeing this happen in the moment, it humanizes Matoy so much more and makes us more on her side. And we can just understand better what motivates her to do what she does. Because yeah, in the book, Jacor, that was a past relationship from Matoy. And we see in the book, her current lover is this guy that she is playing all kinds of mind games with. And she's just messing with him in so many ways. And so again, in the movie, we don't see that. Instead, we see her genuine interest in being with Jacor, and then again, he casts her aside. And so that was one huge change with Matoy. We see how she is truly heartbroken by this experience. And then later, we see how she is trying to fan the flames between Cecile and Dossigny, because Jacor, he really wants to marry Cecile because she's so pure and clean and she's a virgin. And so Matoy is like, I'm going to make sure she's not a virgin. And so she's trying to get Dossigny and Cecile to have sex. And in this version, she plans a secret meeting for the two of them, and she sets them up in this room, and she gets Cecile all dolled up in this sexy outfit. And it's clearly they're meant to have sex right now. There is nothing stopping them. Everything is there, encouraging them to have sex. And yet what happens is that Dossigny simply ends up giving Cecile a music lesson on the harp because he is her music teacher. And so I thought that was hilarious. But Cecile, she is only 15 in the book, and this movie stays true to that because the actress here, she was only 14 when they filmed this movie. But yeah, also, so we do have Valmont sleeping with Cecile here. By the way, they used a body double for those scenes because the actress was underage. But here, she is distraught after after this happens and she goes to Matoy and tells her like, oh, like, you know, this is what just happened. And so she does go to her for comfort, similar to the book. But yeah, just in general, this whole scene was not nearly as upsetting as it had been in the book because yeah, in the book, it was a horrible moment as far as Valmont is concerned. And then Matoy, the way she treated Cecile was so horrible in the book. So yeah, in general, this scene just wasn't as sickening as it had been in the book or even the 88 movie. But then yeah, in the end of this movie, Cecile is pregnant with Valmont's baby and Valmont ends up dying. But Cecile, she still marries Jacor. And so Matoy gets her revenge because Jacor is marrying Cecile, who is no longer a virgin. And not only that, she is pregnant with another man's child. Whereas in the end of the book, Cecile, she has a miscarriage. And then at the end, she goes and joins a convent because she is just so ashamed of everything that has happened. So yeah, very different ending for Cecile. Also a very different ending for Matoy because her letters in the end of Dangerous Liaisons, Valmont releases the letters she has been writing him, which exposes who she really is. Similar to Cruel Intentions, right? They release Sebastian's sex journal, which exposes Catherine for who she really is. Whereas here, nothing is exposed and Matoy maintains her reputation. And then I haven't talked about Torvel, Madame Torvel. So their relationship too, like Valmont, he wasn't as despicable again, like I said, and here he seems to truly have feelings for Torvel and he doesn't break up with her in that like horrible way like he does in the book in 88 movie. And in fact, in the end, he dies in a duel with Dawsonye. And in the end, we see Torvel with her husband placing a rose on Valmont's grave. And so Torvel also gets a much better ending because in the ending of the book, she dies. So I do like that all of the women have happier endings here than they did in the book. But yeah, I guess that wraps it up for Valmont and Cruel Intentions. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Even though I didn't love the TV show, I'm so glad they made it because if it wasn't for this new adaptation, it would have been much longer before I covered Dangerous Liaisons. And I loved that book and I've loved the movie adaptations. So yeah, so I'm very grateful for Amazon readapting this because it got me to finally read this amazing book and watch these movies again. Well, Cruel Intentions I watched again because I'd seen that movie before, but Dangerous Liaisons and Valmont I had never seen before. So I loved watching them. I loved covering Dangerous Liaisons, Cruel Intentions. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video and share your thoughts down below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and I will see you next time. Bye.